That night, when my straight best friend thought I was asleep, turned into one of the wildest, most unforgettable experiences of my life. He did something I never saw coming. Let me take you back to how it all began. It was one of those nights that felt like time had slowed down. The apartment was dim, lit only by the soft glow of my desk lamp and the faint blue flicker of the TV. Rain tapped steadily against the windows, casting a hush over the city like even the world was holding its breath. I was curled up on the couch, pretending to be asleep, one arm draped over my face, my breathing calm and even. But I was wide awake. Every creak, every breath, every movement. I noticed it all, especially him. Henry moved around the kitchen like he always did, a mix of clumsy and graceful, barefoot on the cold tile, humming under his breath. We'd been roommates for almost a year, ever since college ended, and we both found work in the same city. Living together had felt like the obvious choice. We already got along, shared a weird sense of humor, and had years of friendship behind us. What could go wrong? Back then, I never expected my feelings for him to change, but they did, slowly, quietly, and then all at once. Henry was everything, straight, confident, effortlessly charming. He was the guy everyone liked without even trying. He'd walk around shirtless like it meant nothing, casually throw an arm around me during movies, and laugh like the world was simple. When I came out to him in our senior year, he just said, "Cool. So, am I still the best-looking guy you know?" And carried on like nothing had shifted. But for me, everything shifted. When we moved in together, I thought I could handle it. I told myself it was just a phase, a temporary crush I could manage. But feelings have a way of creeping in when you least expect them. They settle into the quiet moments. They hide in shared spaces, in laughter, in the way someone says your name. That night was full of those moments. I heard him approaching from the hallway, the soft creak of the wooden floor just outside the living room. I didn't move. I kept my body still, my breathing even. He probably thought I was asleep. I expected him to walk past, head to bed like always. But then, he paused. He didn't just stop. He lingered. His footsteps halted, and I heard the smallest hitch in his breath. Then came the shift. The weight of his presence drifted toward me like gravity had pulled him in. The couch dipped under his weight. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain he could hear it echoing through the room. Still, I didn't move. Maybe he dropped something. Maybe he was adjusting the blanket or checking if I was cold. That's what I told myself, until I felt it. His hand. It hovered just above my arm, fingers twitching as if he was unsure whether to make contact. And then, gently, he did. A soft brush of his fingertips along the inside of my forearm, slow, tentative, unsure. My skin lit up at his touch. Every nerve fired like I hadn't let anyone this close in years. Still, I didn't move. I didn't know if I should pull away or lean in. But then, impossibly, he left his hand there, warm and full against my skin, like it belonged. His thumb moved, tracing slow arcs across my arm. "God," he whispered, barely audible, "why do you make this so hard?" I held my breath. He didn't know I was awake. He couldn't. He let out a deep, conflicted sigh, the kind that carries weight, confusion, regret. He pulled his hand away, and for a second I thought that was it, that he'd go back to bed, pretend none of it happened. But he didn't. He moved closer instead. I could feel the warmth of his body behind me. I was lying on my side. He knelt at the edge of the couch, his fingers gently brushing along my back, nervous but deliberate. I wanted to turn and see him. I wanted to know what this was. But I stayed still, afraid I'd scare it away. "I don't know what I'm doing," he whispered. Then, after a beat, "But I know I keep finding excuses to be near you." My chest tightened. He shifted again, and this time his hand moved to my hair, brushing a strand from my forehead. His fingers lingered, then slid down to trace the line of my jaw. "I wish I could talk to you about this," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "But I'm scared that if I do, everything will change, and I don't want to lose what we have." He leaned in. I could feel his breath on my cheek, close, too close. For a second I thought he might kiss me. My heart was pounding so violently it hurt. And then, nothing. He froze. Maybe he realized how close he'd gotten. Maybe he was fighting himself. I don't know. But his hand dropped back to his lap, and then I felt his forehead gently rest against my shoulder. Not romantic. Not exactly. More like he needed to be near someone, like he didn't know how to be anywhere else. "I think I feel something," he whispered. "But I don't know what to do with it." I lay there completely still, wrapped in that. The confession hit hard. My breath hitched. He stepped closer, just slightly. "I don't know what to do with this," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I've tried to ignore it, but it doesn't go away. And then last night, you just looked so peaceful, like you were dreaming, and I guess I got caught in it too." I slowly set the coffee down and looked at him. "So what now?" He shook his head, a crooked, helpless smile tugging at his lips. "I don't know, but I don't want to pretend anymore." His hand brushed mine. Not a grab, just the back of his fingers grazing my skin. And I didn't pull away. "You don't have to label this," I said. "We don't have to rush anything. But if this is real, I need to know you're not going to run when it gets hard." "I won't," he said instantly. "I swear. I just need time. I need to understand this. Me, us." "Okay," I nodded. "Then let's start with this. You're not alone. You never were." His shoulders relaxed, the tension easing from his body. "Thanks," he said, voice soft. Then, without a word, he pulled me into a hug. It wasn't brief. It wasn't casual. His arms wrapped around me like he was holding on for dear life. His cheek rested against my head, and I leaned into him. The scent of sleep and warmth and Henry filling my senses. I didn't know where this was going. I didn't know if we'd make it or fall apart before we even began. But in that moment, wrapped in his arms in a quiet morning kitchen, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. And Henry. He was holding on just as tightly. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full, thick with all the things we weren't saying. It buzzed with unspoken questions, yes, but also with something softer, something real, like we'd crossed an invisible line and neither of us could pretend it hadn't happened. When he finally pulled away, it was only enough to meet my eyes. His expression was wide open, unguarded, vulnerable, maybe even a little scared. "I don't want to mess this up," he said quietly. "Us. Whatever this is becoming." "You won't," I said without a second's hesitation. We stayed like that, neither of us moving. His hands were still on my arms, mine resting lightly at his waist. There we were, just two people standing in our kitchen while the soft hum of the fridge filled the room, sunlight slicing through the blinds like a quiet promise. He smiled, a little dazed, like he still hadn't caught up with what we were feeling. "I have class soon," he mumbled, like the outside world had only just come back into focus. "When you get back," I said, "we'll talk more. Figure this out." He nodded but didn't move. It was like he was afraid stepping away would make the whole moment vanish. And honestly, I was scared of that too, scared that if we let go now, we might never get it back. Eventually, he left. Hoodie pulled on, gym bag slung over his shoulder. But before he closed the door behind him, he gave me one last look, the kind that stayed with me long after he was gone. I stood in the same spot for a while, hands still tingling from where we'd touched. My chest felt too full, too empty, all at once. The whole day blurred by. I tried to focus, to work, but my thoughts kept circling back to him, his voice cracking, the way he'd held me like I was the only thing grounding him to this world. His words echoed in my mind. Every time I look at you, it's like something shifts in my chest, like I can't breathe right. By the time he came back, I was a mess of nerves and questions. He walked in like always, keys tossed onto the table, sneakers kicked off like he didn't have a care in the world. But something in him had shifted. His posture was slower, more uncertain. He paused when he saw me sitting at the table. "Hey," he said, as if it was the first time. "Hey." He dropped his bag beside the couch, rubbing the back of his neck. "We should talk, actually talk." I nodded and motioned to the chair across from me. He sat down, but not the way he normally would. This time he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers interlaced. "I couldn't stop thinking about this all day," he began, voice soft. "I still don't have it all figured out, but I don't want to be scared of it. Of us." My heart thudded. "Neither do I. I've never felt like this about another guy," he continued. "I mean, I'm still the same person. I still don't get your weird Netflix documentaries. I still drink too much Red Bull and wait until I run out of clean socks to do laundry." He laughed, nervous and raw. "But then I look at you, and it's like I've been searching for something my whole life, and I didn't even know it, until I found it in the way you laugh when you think no one's listening, or the way you cut vegetables like you're performing surgery, the way you just know when I'm not okay, even when I'm pretending to be." "Henry," my voice caught in my throat. He looked up, locking eyes with me. "Last night scared me. I didn't mean to say those things out loud, but I did. And now I can't take them back. I meant every word." I reached across the table and took his hand. He didn't flinch. His fingers curled around mine like they belonged there. "You don't have to label anything," I told him. "You don't even have to understand it all right now. We can take this slow. As slow as you need." He let out a breathy laugh, full of nerves. "Slow might kill me." "Not slow," I corrected with a small smile. "Just honest." The air changed again. No more walls, no more pretending. There were still questions, still fear, but we were facing them together now. He stood and came around the table, stopping just in front of me. His eyes searched mine, silently asking for permission. I gave it, by not looking away, by staying still, by simply being there. He leaned down and kissed me. It wasn't a long kiss, not some dramatic movie scene, but it was real, careful, tender. When he pulled away, he rested his forehead against mine. "That was okay?" he asked, voice low. "More than okay," I whispered. "We didn't rush into anything else. Not yet." That night, we did what we always did. Ordered takeout, argued over toppings, half-watched a movie while sprawled on the couch. But this time, he sat closer. His thigh brushed mine. His hand settled gently on my leg. And every time our eyes met, it wasn't like before. We weren't just friends anymore. We were something more, something just beginning. And then came the moment I wasn't expecting. When the movie ended and the credits started to roll, he looked at me and said, "Can I sleep here? Just be next to you?" No jokes, no teasing, just truth. I nodded. We lay side by side on the too small pull-out couch, the kind of surface that made closeness inevitable. He curled toward me, arms around my waist, and I let myself relax into him, into the steady rise and fall of his chest, the warm quiet of it all. It was a beginning, and somewhere in that silence, tangled in blankets and each other, we both fell asleep. I woke the next morning to the warmth of his breath on my neck. The first light of dawn spilled through the blinds, painting golden stripes across the room. Henry's arm was still draped around me, his fingers twitching lightly in sleep. And for that one suspended moment, I let myself stay there, wrapped in peace, wrapped in him. Having him so close, without panic, without pretending, It felt like the world had stilled just for us. But moments like that never last forever. He shifted gently, waking, and I felt his body tighten slightly. His fingers moved against my hip, once, then again, as if trying to decide whether to pull away or stay. "You're awake," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. It sounded more like a question than a statement. I nodded, still not turning to face him. "Yeah, I've been awake for a while." His breath caught faintly behind me. "I didn't mean to. I mean, I guess I did. I just didn't know if it was okay." "It is," I said softly. "It really is." Silence stretched between us again. Not awkward, just waiting. Like we both sensed the tide was about to shift. Eventually, he sat up. He stretched, the blankets sliding off his shoulders, and stared down at the floor like the weight of his thoughts had finally caught up. "I keep pretending like this is normal," he said quietly. "Like I'm not lying awake every night thinking about it, about you, about what this means." I sat up beside him, careful not to touch him. "You don't have to figure it all out right now, Henry." He looked at me then. Really looked. "But what if I want to? What if I'm tired of feeling like I'm drowning in this silence between us?" His voice broke a little. "I walk around like I'm fine, like I've got it together. But I don't. I'm barely holding on. And not because I'm confused, it's because when I'm with you, everything feels both clearer and messier." I didn't speak right away. I had dreamed of this, of him being honest, vulnerable. But now that it was happening, I realized how long he'd been carrying this weight. Not because of me, but because he'd never let himself want freely. Feel freely. "You don't have to hide anymore," I said. "Not with me." His eyes glossed with emotion, though he quickly looked away. "It's not just about being with you," he whispered. "It's about what it means if I am. It changes everything I thought I knew about myself. And that terrifies me." I nodded. "Yeah, but it also frees you." He didn't answer right away. The morning air was cool, but his nearness made it feel warmer somehow, like gravity was slowly pulling us back together. "I keep thinking about last night," he said, his voice lower. "How I stood outside your room for 10 minutes before I had the guts to open the door, and even then I only spoke because I thought you were asleep." I smiled gently. "Pretty brave for a guy who didn't think anyone was listening." He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "God, that's embarrassing." "No," I said. "It was real." He turned toward me then, fully, and I saw something shift in his eyes. Fear, yes, but something else, too. Hunger. Not just for touch, but for truth. For belonging. "You looked at me yesterday," he said softly, "like you actually saw me. Not the version I show the world, just me." "I did," I whispered. "I always have." He didn't speak. He just reached out and took my hand, threading his fingers with mine like he was still scared I'd pull away. "You make me feel safe," he said. "Because you are," I replied. "With me, you always are." And something in him broke, not in pain, but like tension that had finally snapped. His shoulders dropped, his brow softened. He stopped fighting. He leaned in slowly, and I met him halfway. This kiss was nothing like before. It wasn't cautious, it wasn't a test. It was slow, deep, full of the things we hadn't said. His hands slid into my hair, mine pressed against his chest. Our mouths moved like they'd been waiting for this for a long time. When we pulled back, we didn't let go. Henry rested his forehead against mine. His breath was uneven. "I've never felt like this before," he whispered. "Not with anyone. It scares the hell out of me." "I know," I said softly. "But you're not alone." His grip on my hand tightened. "Promise? I'm not going anywhere." And neither was he. Because this wasn't confusion anymore. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't some secret whispered into the dark. This was real. Fragile, yes, but alive, steady, like a new light flickering into life in a room we'd both wandered through blind. We stayed like that a while, quiet, close, not hiding, not pretending. And what came next wasn't a question of if, but when. And when was already here. Eventually, Henry stood and gently pulled me up with him. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. His hand stayed in mine, grounding us both in something honest. When we reached the bedroom, he paused and turned to me. Light filtered in through the blinds, soft gold across his face. "Are you sure?" I asked, barely above a whisper. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said. I could see the nerves still lingering, the tightness in his shoulders, the shallow breath. But it wasn't fear that made people run. It was the kind that made them reach. He stepped forward and placed his palm flat on my chest, over my heart. "You feel that?" he whispered. It was in the way he looked at me, that quiet intensity I tried to ignore. But the truth, I'd felt it every time he walked into a room. He nodded, like he was finally letting himself admit it too. "That's how I've been feeling. Every time you looked at me this past month. Every time you walked in. Every time I tried not to feel it." His fingers curled into the fabric of my shirt, pulling me gently toward him. This kiss was different. No hesitation, no testing the waters. It was surrender, not to weakness, but to truth. His lips were warm and certain, moving with a quiet intensity that erased all doubt. I felt his breath exhale through his nose, like kissing me was the release he'd been aching for. His hands settled at my waist, no longer tentative but sure. He drew me closer until there was no space left between us. My fingers found his hair, tangling slightly, tugging just enough to draw out a soft sound from him, a mix of gasp and groan that sent heat spiraling through me. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, our foreheads touched, and I felt his breath against my skin. His grip on my hips tightened like he couldn't let go. "I've wanted this," he whispered, voice rough. Long before I understood why. "You don't have to explain," I said softly, brushing my thumb along his cheek. "You're here. That's enough." Something in those words cracked him open. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me close again. His lips found the corner of my jaw, the curve of my neck, like he couldn't help it. There was no performance in it, no doubt, just need, honest, raw, and real. We fell back onto the bed, not rushed, but purposeful. Every touch was intentional, every kiss a quiet act of reverence. He moved like he was memorizing me, my shape, my breath, the way my fingers trailed down his spine. I responded with the same care, the same wonder. It felt like we were rediscovering each other, stripped of every wall we'd once kept up. Clothes slipped away between kisses and soft laughter, clumsy in a way that made it more intimate. He whispered my name like it was the only thing that made sense anymore. I held him like I never wanted to let go. There was no script, just us, learning each other in a rhythm that felt entirely ours. I watched his face shift with every new sensation, every new inch of skin. And when our eyes met again, there was no fear, only trust, only awe. He moved above me with a tenderness I hadn't expected, his hands never leaving mine, like he needed the reminder. I was there with him, fully. We didn't speak much. Words felt too small for what we were sharing. Instead, we spoke through touch, through the way our bodies curled into each other, through the way he breathed my name, like it held more meaning than language could. When it was over, if something like that can ever really be over, we lay together in the hush that followed. Skin still warm, hearts still racing. Henry's arm draped over my chest, his fingers tracing slow shapes against my skin. "I didn't think I'd ever feel like this," he murmured, voice quiet. "Not with anyone." especially not someone who means this much to me. I turned my head and kissed the crown of his curls. Then I'm glad we got to feel it together. He shifted to look at me, eyes clearer than I'd ever seen them. I'm sorry it took me so long. Don't be, I said. You got here. That's what matters. He smiled, small but real. And in that moment I knew we'd passed the point of no return. Not in a way that was scary, but in a way that made everything before this feel like the prologue to something better, something real. Yes, there would be fears to unpack, things to say, but in the golden quiet of that morning, with our bodies still wrapped in each other and the air still tasting like something new, we'd stepped into the truth, together. In the weeks that followed, things didn't just stay the same, they deepened. What began that night didn't burn out like some reckless flame. It settled into something steady, warm, and constant. We didn't rush to label it, didn't feel the need to explain it. It was ours, quiet, intense, real. We kept sharing a bed, sometimes tangled together like we were still afraid to let go. Other times just close enough to hear each other breathe. And yes, we did it again, not just once or twice, but often. Sometimes slow, like rediscovery. Other times urgent, like making up for all those nights we'd pretended not to want each other. Every time brought us closer. Stripped away more fear. Made it impossible to imagine going back. But beyond desire, there was something gentler. Ethan would reach for my hand when no one was watching. Brush his fingers against my back while we waited for coffee. Let his knee rest against mine under the table. It wasn't always about wanting. It was about being present. A quiet way of saying, I'm here. I still want this. We hadn't told anyone. Not yet. We weren't in a rush. There was something sweet in the secrecy, a private language made of looks and touches. And though we knew conversations were coming about what this meant, who we were now, we weren't afraid anymore. Because after all that waiting, all that silence, we finally had what we'd been too scared to ask for: each other.